we're covering one of the most widely discussed and emotionally charged cases of the past year. The death of Micah Miller and the ongoing legal developments involving her estranged husband, John Paul Jr. Miller. This video will walk through who Micah was, the breakdown of her marriage, a clear timeline of events, and the latest federal headlines that have brought this case back into the spotlight. This is not speculation. Everything discussed here is based on public records, court filings, and verified reporting. Viewer discretion is advised.
Incessant phone calls, leaked nudes, a tracker on a car. These are just some of the allegations that are laid out against John Paul J.P. Miller by federal prosecutors out in South Carolina. A brand new indictment comes nearly 2 years after Miller was thrust into the spotlight in connection with his wife's death. We've talked about this before. Micah Miller took her own life on April 27th, 2024. This was 2 days after serving Miller with divorce papers. Miller himself, a pastor, delivered the news to the congregation at Solid Rock Church in Myrtle Beach at the end of a sermon, and this shocked everyone.
I got a call late last night. My wife has passed away. And yeah, it was self-induced, and it was up in North Carolina. And she wasn't. Y'all knew that she wasn't well mentally, and that she needed her medicine that was hard to get to her.
Almost immediately after people heard that news, rumors started flying that Miller could have had something to do with Micah dying. Now, to be clear, authorities have said there was no direct evidence saying that he killed her or was responsible for her death, because at first there was speculation that Miller might have been directly involved. There was rumors about staging a homicide to look like something else. But to be clear, a medical examiner confirmed that Micah's death, this tragedy, was a fatal gunshot wound, was self-inflicted. But then something else happened. As word spread that Miller may have been allegedly abusive, there were accusations from Micah's family and the community that Miller had Micah under his thumb, refused to let her go, that she reportedly became more isolated, which, by the way, she seemingly addressed in a Facebook video.
Hey, everybody. I just want to let you know that I'm alive and well, and life's been kind of crazy the couple past weeks, months, years, but I've kind of had to keep my circle really small for the past couple weeks just because I'm going through a lot, and it's hard, and it's my cross to bear. It's the thing that God has put in my life to deal with, and I don't want to bring a lot of people into it.
And just a couple months before her body was found at a state park, Micah Miller made a call to 911 telling the dispatcher that Miller had assaulted her.
911 with added emergency.
Hi, I have somebody who I believe to be in a manic state and is a direct danger to the people in his household and himself and others. I need an immediate pickup, not the 72-hour pickup that a spouse can initiate. I need this to be a little quicker because he is a flight risk. There's been domestic violence. He put his hands on me, and he's pushed me down in front of thousands of people at Disney World. And so, yeah, and his best friend even saw that happen. Slapped drinks right out of my hand.
Okay.
I was in the hospital after that from just a panic attack of what was happening.
So with it looking more and more like Micah was living in an allegedly abusive relationship, many in the community, they called for authorities to get involved and determine whether Miller had any culpability in Micah's death in some way. Now, meanwhile, according to multiple online reports, Miller seemed to be moving on. And pretty quickly. He was reportedly seen on a date with a woman named Susie Skinner just days after Micah's death. According to Miller's first wife, Miller and Skinner, they were allegedly having an affair in 2021, the same year that Skinner's wheelchair-bound husband drowned. It's a really odd thing that two people who had a relationship are suddenly both single because of the deaths of their spouses. But to be clear, authorities have never said there is any evidence to suggest these deaths are anything than what they seem. I will tell you, Miller and Skinner, they got married this past summer. So now I want to go back to November 1st of last year. You know why? Because that is when the FBI searched Miller's home. They were reportedly seen removing items from his house, but what exactly was taken into evidence or why Miller was under investigation, that wasn't clear. During all this, Miller was having to contend also with protesters outside of his home and church calling for justice for Micah. And after the FBI raid, tensions boiled over, and Miller was ultimately arrested for getting into an altercation with a woman in a parking lot. Authorities were called out, and according to an incident report, the woman that Miller got apparently into this altercation with told police, quote, "While she was on the sidewalk in front of Solid Rock Church, she observed the offender recording them from behind protesters' vehicles in the parking lot. She then went across the street to confront him. She stated she called out to the offender to ask what he was doing. The offender walked away, but she called back out to him, and the offender came back and met her in between two vehicles where words were exchanged, and the victim said the offender began began recording her. While the offender was holding the phone up to her face, the victim said the offender asked her, "What you gonna do?" and tapped the bill of her hat 2 times and walked away, after which the victim yelled at the offender, "Don't you touch me," multiple times. So Miller was later arrested. He was charged with 3rd-degree assault and battery. He was released on bond the following day. And as we started digging into Miller, and as we started looking more into his prior legal issues, we learned a lot of information from a request that Micah filed with Surfside Beach Magistrate Court on March 11th. And this is where she was seeking a restraining order. She alleged that Miller was stalking her, doing things like putting a tracker on her car, spamming her phone with calls and text messages. The court proceedings ended up being dismissed and no restraining order was ever actually issued. But in light of what he's now charged with, you gotta wonder, are authorities believing everything she was saying? Because I will tell you, those allegations right now are in black and white in federal court records. A grand jury returned a bill of indictment, the United States of America versus John Paul Miller. To talk more about this, the allegations, I want to welcome back on Regina Ward, an attorney for Micah's family. Thank you so much for taking the time. Before we even go through the indictment here, this is major news for anybody who's been following this story. We know the family has been waiting for some sort of accountability for years. How are they feeling right now, given the fact that he has been indicted?
Yes, it's been like kind of felt like everyone else. When is the day coming? And so the wheels of justice tend to turn a little slow, but that's okay. I'm happy with methodical justice, and I'm glad we're here.
So how would you purify water in case of a blackout? Oh, I'd boil it. Boiling kills bacteria, but it doesn't remove contaminants. Plus, it takes a long.
As the lawyer in me, I do have to say, look, he is innocent until proven guilty. The prosecution will have the burden of proving all of this. But have you learned any more on your end about the FBI investigation, what has been going on behind the scenes? Because this has taken some time since the news first broke that his property was being searched to now the indictment. Do you know anything that's been going on behind the scenes that you can share with us?
Right. I wouldn't have any direct personal knowledge. I did in the beginning, obviously, whenever the subpoena was served upon me for my documents and things that the FBI wanted when they were beginning their investigation. Once that ball got rolling and they were, they had everything that I had, then they executed that search warrant, which I'm sure added a lot to it. As far as what was going on behind the scenes, I can only imagine by virtue of this indictment, they've been doing their job and getting the evidence and everything together to be able to pull this indictment off.
Let's talk about the indictment. I want to go through it because, and as we go through it, so everybody knows, Micah is referred to victim 1 here. So there are 2 counts. Count 1, cyberstalking. Here's what the filing says. The grand jury charges that beginning on or around November 16th, 2022, and continuing through on or about April 27th, 2024, in the District of South Carolina and elsewhere, the defendant, John Paul Miller, with the intent to kill, injure, harass, intimidate, or place under surveillance with the intent to kill, injure, harass, intimidate victim 1, used interactive computer services to engage in a course of conduct that placed victim 1 in reasonable fear of death or serious bodily injury and attempted to cause, and the course of conduct would be reasonably expected to cause victim 1 substantial emotional distress, to wit, John Paul Miller sent or caused to be sent unwanted and harassing electronic communications to victim 1, used or threatened to use nude photos and photographs of victim 1 to harass victim 1, posted a nude photograph of victim 1 online without victim 1's consent, placed or caused to be placed tracking devices on vehicles used by victim 1, placed victim 1 or caused victim 1 to be placed under surveillance with the intent to harass and intimidate victim 1, damaged victim 1's vehicle, interfered with victim 1's finances and banking, and interfered with victim 1's daily activities. There's a whole lot to unpack there, but Regina, first, I think it's notable that these were allegations we had heard before, but federal prosecutors believe they have the evidence to substantiate this.
Yes, as I stated before with the subpoena, the things that Micah kept and put together in preparation for her hearing in family court, all of those things were turned over, and it had to do with specifically the nude photo that's being referred to. Also, the tracking device and the evidence that we had of that tracking device. The police reports that were made that support the damage to her vehicle and the slashing of her tires. There's supporting evidence for all of that was collected by Micah herself.
And if you talk about the nude photos or the videos of Micah that Miller allegedly put online, we've actually heard about this before. News Nation reported last year.
Who was Micah Miller? Micah Miller was a 30-year-old woman from the Myrtle Beach area of South Carolina. Friends and family described her as deeply religious, creative, and passionate about worship music and missionary work. She was married to local pastor John Paul Miller, who led Solid Rock Church in Myrtle Beach. In April of 2024, Micah's death became national news, not only because of his tragic nature, but because of the circumstances surrounding her relationship, her separation, and the questions that followed. Authorities later ruled her death a suicide. However, for many people following the case, that ruling did not bring closure and justice. Now, the marriage and separation. Micah Miller and John Paul Miller were married for several years. Over time, their relationship deteriorated. Court records show that Michael filed for divorce more than once, with her final filing occurring just days before her death. According to family members and legal filings, Micah had expressed fear regarding her husband's behavior during their separation. She reportedly told others that she believed she was being followed and monitored. Police reports later documented incidents involving tracking devices found on her vehicle. These claims will become central to the story as more information emerged after her death. John Paul Miller has denied wrongdoing and has stated publicly that he did not abuse or harm his wife. To understand why this case continues to generate attention, it's important to walk through the timeline. In the months before her death, Micah allegedly reported repeated unwanted contact and surveillance. According to law enforcement records, she found tracking devices attached to her car on more than one occasion. In February and April of 24, these incidents were documented with police. On April 25th of 2024, Micah officially served divorce papers. 2 days later, on April 27, Micah made a 911 call from Lumber River State Park in North Carolina. Later that day, her body was found. The medical examiner ruled her death a suicide by gunshot wound. Authorities stated there was no evidence of another person being present at the scene. Despite the ruling, the case quickly drew national attention and public debate. Almost immediately, questions began to arise, circulating online and within Micah's community. Some focused on the timing of the divorce filing. Others questioned whether enough was done to investigate allegations of stalking and harassment. Supporters of Micah organized rallies, launched online campaigns, and called for further investigation. The hashtag Justice for Micah began trending across social platforms. At the same time, law enforcement agencies maintained that the official ruling was based on available evidence. This divide between official conclusions and public suspicion would shape the narrative moving forward. Now, the latest headlines here, the federal indictment. In late 2024 and into 2025, the case took a major turn. Federal prosecutors announced that John Paul Miller had been indicted on multiple charges. According to the indictment, Miller is accused of cyberstalking his estranged wife prior to her death. Prosecutors alleged that he repeatedly tracked Micah's movements and shared intimate images of her without consent. The indictment also includes a charge for making false statements to federal investigators. Specifically, prosecutors claim Miller lied about hiring a private investigator, allegedly stating it was for Micah's safety, while investigators say it was used to monitor her. These charges are separate from the determination of Micah's cause of death. They focus solely on alleged conduct before her passing. If convicted, Miller could face several years in federal prison. Now, the relationship dynamics and allegations. As these legal proceedings unfolded, renewed attention was placed on the nature of Micah and John Paul's relationship. Experts and advocates have pointed to patterns often associated with coercive control, including surveillance, unwanted communication, and monitoring behavior. It's important to note that allegations are not convictions. John Paul Miller has continued to deny the accusations and has stated through attorneys that he is innocent. The legal process will ultimately determine the outcome. However, the case has sparked broader conversations about domestic control, cyberstalking laws, and how warning signs are handled. Now, what happens next? As of now, John Paul Miller is scheduled to appear in federal court in early 2026. The upcoming proceedings will determine whether the charges move forward to trial. There are also ongoing discussions around potential civil actions and legislative efforts inspired by Micah's case. For many, this is not just one person. It's about accountability and prevention. The story of Micah Miller is tragic, complex, and still unfolding. While legal systems focus on evidence and charges, the public continues to grapple with unanswered questions and emotional impact. As new information becomes available, this case will remain in the spotlight. Thank you for watching. If you found this breakdown helpful, consider subscribing and feel free to share your thoughts respectfully in the comments. To everyone that's being controlled, man or woman, let me tell you that you matter and God has designed you and you have a purpose in this life. Please talk to safe people who are considerate and have empathy for whatever you're going through. My heart and my prayers are with you. Take care.